fantastic day. I know it's been a minute. Had to get some things going on, but I am here better than ever. Let me make sure that everything is broadcasting correctly. Uh, I'm picking up and etc. So give me 1 second. There we go, right there. Let me make sure that I have some volume. I do have volume. Alright, so now give me 1 sec. I gotta put this in a chat because I explained last night that I was gonna actually do a lesson on it. So now I'm gonna actually do my lesson on it. Just to talk about my perspective of dealing with polygyny. And I wanna come through, I'm gonna use information. Alright, I'm not just gonna be talking, I'm gonna show what I'm talking about. So, alright. And let me tag a few of my brothers in it so we can get this party started. And I know a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but it is what it is, you know. We gotta accept truth with our walk. It's all about truth. And feel free to share it with whoever you want to. Okay, now I need to tag everybody I need to tag. Good morning to everyone. First of all, this is Elvin Israel from the Assembly of Sound Doctrine, Chandler, AOSD-The. This is my YouTube. If you can, please subscribe to my YouTube where I have over 200 and something videos. I also have debates. Right now I have 27 debates and a little thing going over the tribulation period. We're forming a class or a university, however you want to put it, dealing with resurrection, prophecy, and kingdom, RPK. That's what we're working on. So if you want to be a part of it, please, please, please let me know and join in. Okay. Where this derived from today, a lot of people deal with polygyny. Y'all know that this is one of the hot subjects inside of the Israelite community. And it's going to be a hot subject for a while because the way that society views polygyny today compared to how they viewed it during our ancestral time is totally different. And you know, us being the product of slavery, feminism, pretty much adapting different cultures that's not our culture, and then we remix that culture and we try to put our own little stamp on it. It has actually took us from the foundation of our ancestry. So a couple of us, you know, we're just trying to go back to the foundation of our ancestry when we were great as a civilization, you know. We was in line with the Father. So what people do today is they take the more of a stance that's not ours, and they try to put it upon all of us. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to tell you what you need to do and what you don't need to do inside of your household. It's your household. Whatever you feel you need to do, you should do it personally in order to help your walk out. But I'm here to give appropriate and proper information concerning the subject of polygyny. So let's start it off. First of all, and I'm going to be showing you all of the things that I have, information. All right. I purchased a book, right? The book is entitled Ancient Rome. Okay, Ancient Rome. So, before we get on Ancient Rome, let's actually just go through Rome real fast. Let's just show you who Rome is, just real fast. All right, we're going to go to Genesis. And we're going to go at chapter 10, right? Genesis chapter 10. And we're going to go through the generations of the sons of Noah, who was Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So now, Moses started off with the sons of Japheth. Okay, so if we're calling ourselves Israelites, right? We should be looking at the line of the lineage of Shem. But we're going to start off with the sons of Japheth, right? So we're just going to go into this right here so we can look at some of these Strong's numbers. And we see that the sons of Japheth is Gomar, Magog, Medea, which is where Media came from, as you can see right there, and Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. But we're going to concentrate on Javan real fast, Japheth. It has right here, Yavan. We see that it is the effervescent that is hot and active. Yavan, the name of the son of Joktan, and of the race Ionians, that is Greeks, descended from him, which their territory also of a place in Arabia. So we see that Yavan, he's the progenitor of the Greeks. So he's the son of Japheth. Yavan is the progenitor of the Greeks. So if we keep going on, right, we go to the sons of Yavan real fast, right? Verse 10. And the sons of Yavan is Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodana. But we're going to look at Kittim real fast, right? Kittim, Kitti, Kitti, patrial from the unused denoting Cyprus on the plural, a Kittite, a Cypriot, hence an Aliner in general, that is, the Greeks or Romans on the shores opposite Palestine, Chittim or Kittim. So once you see Kittim or Chittim, you're thinking about the progenitor of the Romans. They could be referred to as the Grecians, which they will be what their father are, or the Romans. So I'm going to read from you from the ancient Romans, who are the sons or the descendants of Japheth, right? The descendants of Japheth. So we got to get that out of the way right now. So I'm going to read to you Japheth's, Kittim's, Yavan's history. Okay, this is their history, not the Semitics, not Shem. Okay, that's what we got to know first. We got to get these families correct when we're learning this information. So this is the information of Chittim or Kittim. I'm going to read from the section entitled Marriage. Okay, it's on page 468. It says marriage, divorce, and the power of the father. And I'm just going to read the very first paragraph. It says, like the Greeks are the father of the Romans. So, like the Greeks, but unlike the early Jews or the Persians, unlike the early Jews or the Persians, the Romans were always monogamous. The Romans, Kittim, were always monogamous. So first of all, we should already know that we live in the United States of America. We live in a Roman culture. This is Romans culture that we live in, that we partake in. The educational system is based off of Roman records. Okay, I used to be a teacher, qualified, certified teacher in the state of Mississippi and in Tennessee for elementary K through 6 as well as special education K through 12. So I'm here to tell you that the information that we brought and that we taught was from a Indo-European mindset and ideology. It's not Semitic. It's not from Shem. It's not from our people. It's from the construct that they created in order to keep certain influence over the citizens of America. So now, like the Greeks, But unlike the early Jews or the Persians, the Romans were always monogamous. The extended family was central to Roman law and society, and especially to the real workings of its informal political system. I'm going to read just a little bit more. Although Roman marriage had as its explicit goal the production and rearing of children among the great political families of the late Republic and Empire, political motives all often dictated unions. So their marriage was pretty much based off of motives. How can we increase our family status? This is the Roman way of doing things. But notice, their law was a monogamous law. It literally said, unlike the Jews, unlike the descendants of Shem, they viewed marriage another way. And since we're under the guise of the Roman government, and we have been influenced by the way they do things, our mindset, our ideology is set forth from a Roman's perspective. This is what monogamy is all about. It started way back then, opposite of our people. We became slaves to these people. They gave us their way of life. That's just what it is. So now, that's just one. I want to also read from A History of Private Life. This is dealing also with the Romans. Okay? Not our people, but the Romans. Marriage, dealing with the Romans, right? It's actually entitled Marriage from page 33. I'm going to read the last of the first section. I'm going to read the last of the first section, and you see I got some highlighted. It says, slaves, it was believed, lived in sexual promiscuity, whatever, save for a handful of trusted slaves who acted as stewards for their masters. As slaves of the emperor himself, served the state of functionaries. These privileged slaves live monogamously with a single concubine, sometimes given them by their master. So even the slaves of the Roman Empire had to be monogamous. Okay, and they called these privileged slaves. So in order to be married with one single concubine, you had to be privileged. And on top of that, you could only do monogamy. Once again, this is Roman. This is the way the Romans, kid them. This is the way their environment, their culture, their territory. This is how they ran their atmosphere. This is how they did their things. And I want to go to the next page, page 34, which is the last paragraph. I'm going to read all the things that I got highlighted. It says, this is dealing with a ceremony. A marriage ceremony involves witnesses, useful in case the marriage was contested. The custom of marriage gifts existed. The wedding night took the form of a legal rape from which the woman emerged offended with her husband, who, accustomed to using his slave women as he pleased, found it difficult to distinguish between raping a woman and taking the initiative in sexual relations. So this is how the Romans played it. First of all, on their wedding night, they would actually go in there and they would rape their wives because they didn't know the correct way to make love to her. They were so used to doing whatever they wanted to their slaves that when they got the women, they thought, I can do the same thing to the women. But this is the point. I want you to think. This is a deeper point. They was out here having sex upon sex with slaves freely, raping the slaves, doing whatever they wanted to their slaves. But when it came to marriage, oh no, you can only marry one person. I can have as much sex as I want to, much sex as I want to. But when it deals with marriage, I can only have one person. Now, does that not seem like today's society here in America, where we have different baby mamas, baby daddies, we have boyfriends and girlfriends, everybody's having sex with everybody. It's all good and dandy. But when it comes to marriage, righteous, oh no, we only can have one spouse. I can sex the whole world, but when it comes to marriage, just one spouse. Because that's what the Romans did. So we do what the Romans did. But let's keep going. The next page, page 35. Why did people marry? For money. Obtaining a dowry was one honorable way to get rich. And for children who, as legitimate heirs, were entitled to inherit an estate. Those children, moreover, perpetuated the state by replenishing the ranks of its citizenry. And I'm going to keep going on. I'm going to go to page 37 now. Once again, I'm showing you, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm reading it right here. So now, let's keep reading. It says, the very grounds of morality, that which justified all the prescriptions, and hence the way in which moral agents perceived as soldiers with a civic duty to perform as a responsible moral individuals. Form determined content. The older moral code said to marry is one duty of the citizen. The newer said to be a good man, one must make love only in order to have children. Marriage is not a means to sexual pleasure. The older code did not question the reasons for the rules. The rule was that the only way to father a citizen was to take a wife, so citizens obeyed and married. Marriage outlives the duty to produce children. This is some of the argument. It was argued. So there must be some other reasons why it exists. Husbands and wife, both reasonable beings, live together all their lives. And I'm going to read this one last one, and then I'm going to go on. Well, I'm going to read two more sections, then I'm going to go on. All right, right here. Page 39. A woman was like a grown child. Now, once again, this is Roman. This is from the Romans, okay? This is the way they did things. This is the way they looked at their marriage, how they did marriage. A woman was like a grown child. Her husband was obliged to humor her because of her dowry and her noble father. Cicero and his correspondents gossiped about the caprices of these lifelong adolescents, who, for example, might seize upon the absence of her husband, sent to govern a remote province in order to divorce him and marry another. These women's antics, nevertheless, had real consequences for political relations among the nobility. So now, these people, these noble Romans, they had to treat their wives, well, they viewed their wives like children, like adolescents. They had to dance for them. They had to do the huckleberry. They had to keep them happy. And doesn't that pretty much sound like what's going on here in America today? You're under feminism. You got to keep your woman happy. You got to jump through hoops. It's all about it's a woman's world. You got to please the woman. Do what the woman wants you to do. And if you don't, she can up and divorce you and get married and go somewhere else. Straight from the handbook of the Romans of the antiquity. But let's keep going. A man was the master of his wife, just as he was the master of his daughters and servants. If a wife was unfaithful, the man did not thereby become a laughingstock. Infidelity was a misfortune, neither greater nor less than the misfortune of a daughter who became pregnant or a slave who failed of his duty. If a wife betrayed her husband, the husband was criticized for want of vigilance and for having, by his own weakness, allowed adultery to flourish in the city, much as we might criticize parents for overindulging or spoiling their children, allowing them to drift into delinquency and thus making the cities unsafe. So the man pretty much got blamed if his wife was unfaithful. They would look at the man and say, "You allowed it. What was you doing in order for your wife to become unfaithful?" And look how our city looks now. You kind of see that going on in society today. Nobody really blames the woman per se. They always look at the man. Well, what was you doing? Okay, you was working 3 jobs, 4 jobs. You shouldn't have worked all them jobs. You should have made her get out and work. You should have did this. You should have did that. You didn't see the signs. All of this stuff, straight from the handbook of the Romans. Not our. If we call ourselves Israelites, descendants of Shem, why are we so in love with a culture not ours? But I'm going to end it with this one. This is dealing with the Christians. Oh, yeah. For a woman to have known only one man in her life was considered a merit, but only the Christians would undertake to make such fidelity and a duty and attempt to prohibit widows from remarrying. So the Christians did not want the widows to remarry. And you actually see this going on, and we're going to touch it later on. I believe they are misrepresenting the book of Timothy, or the letter of Timothy, what Timothy was writing, saying that a husband could be the wife, be the husband of one wife and all that stuff. Because the way that you can perceive that is that you can only marry one person at a time. And right here, this is what they're saying. They don't want a widow to get remarried, because if a widow get remarried, then she violates that a man can only be the husband of one wife. So he cannot remarry. A widow cannot get remarried, especially if a man has already been, married. Blah blah blah. This and that. But this is what the Christians did. The Christians that was over there in Rome. This is their stuff. At a certain point in history, both pagans and Christians said, "Do not make love except to have children." But the consequences of such a declaration differ, depending on whether it is made by philosophy that offers advice to free individuals who may take it or leave it, and is found as the arguments convincing or not, or by an all-powerful church which sees its mission as one of securing salvation in the hereafter through the regulations of consciousness here below, and seeks to lay down the law to all men without exception, whether convinced or not. So, to make a long story short, the Christians over there under the Roman Empire, not only did they was like one man, one woman, they was like, and on top of that, inside of your household, if you're having sex, you only needed to do it to produce children. It's not meant for you to have pleasure. It's not meant for you to have fun. It's not meant for that. It's only meant for the production of children. Welcome to the world of the Romans. So now, we have that out the way. This is just a little of the historical information dealing with how we inherited the ideology of monogamy. It came from Japheth's descendants. It did not come from Shem's descendants. It wasn't something that we had in our culture and our civilization. It was inherited by outsiders. And when they took over us, we joined their culture. We assimilated into them. And you have the same thing today when you hear people talking about things such as marriage. But now, I want to concentrate now on the Bible. Okay? Let's hit the Bible now. Because for some reason, this is what our people do. They forget that there's a whole culture going on while the Bible was being written and created. They forgot that things went on, the ideology evolved, the words evolved, the way the culture did things evolved. They think that things were just complacent, everything stood still. One thing, no, y'all, the Bible itself is about individuals, certain individuals going through certain things, and we are to see how they dealt with it and how the Most High dealt with them in order to have a better understanding on when we get hit with similar problems, how we need to respond to it. Hold on, y'all. Give me 1 sec. I will be right back. Hold on. Sorry about that, y'all. So now, things don't get you shaking around here to 10 o'clock on the weekend. And I got 30 more minutes. So now, we forget that this Bible is not it's not going over the whole entire civilization. It's just speaking on certain examples from certain people. So when you're reading the Bible, once you read what David did or what Solomon did, this doesn't mean the whole entire millions of people that lived back then did the same thing. These people's specific experiences of what was going on with them. We got to remember that. So, since we set the tone now, I want to look at, let's go over some of the things that people go to. Let's go to 1 Timothy, right? Let's go to 1 Timothy. There's some of the stuff that people like. I want to start at chapter 5. And I'm going to go to verse 9. This is where people forget. When we're talking about polygyny, monogamy, and we want to go to scriptures and all this stuff, people forget that there's other verses. So, first of all, let's go to 1 Timothy 3 and 2, right? It says, a bishop. Well, let's start at 1. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. Okay, so now, first of all, when they see the husband of one wife, right? See right there. You can only have one wife. No polygyny, right there. First of all, it says to be a bishop. That's the first time. So, is the whole world, are you trying to be a bishop? I mean, we're gonna actually break down all this stuff, but are you trying to be a bishop? So, if you're not trying to be a bishop, by default, will this rule apply to you if you're not trying to be a bishop? All right, that's one thing. All right, so now, let's think of other stuff. The husband of one wife. Well, what all could that mean? Let's see. The husband of one wife. Well, what was the problem going on in the first century that Christ and Paul and Peter, all of them was addressing? What was one problem that was going on in the southern kingdom? Divorce. They kept divorcing women for no reason. And they was using the law. Well, Moses said we can do it. They was divorcing these women for no reason. No, they didn't have to have a real reason. They just had to have the bill of divorce and divorce a woman, right? So, how do you know that Timothy isn't saying that you cannot be a divorcee if you're going to be a bishop? You cannot have divorced a woman and then come back and marry another woman, and you divorce that woman for no cause. Just like what Christ and all of them spoke against, divorcing women for no cause except for fornication. So how can you lead the congregation? How could you lead the assembly if you have already divorced a woman for no cause and you have another woman? What kind of example are you setting for the assembly? This is exactly what Christ spoke against. So that could be one meaning behind it. Also, how do you know? You're not saying that you cannot have been a widow and married another woman. You cannot have had a woman die and then you marry another woman. That could be it. Husband or one wife. You cannot be a widow and married to another woman. Or, how do you know it's not talking about idolatry or dealing with the church? A bishop, which is something dealing with the assembly, cannot be an adulterer, an adulterer. He cannot be like the northern and the southern kingdom, which was split up due to the Most High divorcing the northern kingdom due to the whoredom. How do you know that that's not the spiritual significance of what was being said? You are a bishop. You cannot be an idolater. You cannot be given over to these things made by wood and stone. You have to be in the assembly. You have to be the husband of one wife, like Christ is the husband of the church. So people automatically run to that's monogamy right there. That means monogamy. You cannot marry. You cannot have more than one wife. That goes against it. Well, did y'all know in Timothy, there's also something similar said about the woman? Now, first of all, before we even go to the verse, if you know the culture, right? If you know the culture of the Israelites, you know polyandry or polygamy as a whole, or polyandry, when a woman has more than one husband. You know that was not a practice in the Israelite community. They was Torah followers, especially dealing with this. You know, one woman did not have many husbands, and everybody was cool with that. So, if it says the husband of one wife, if that deals with polygyny, then if we read something that says the wife of one husband, that must mean that deals with polyandry, because it's the same thing. One of them is for the woman, the other one is for the man. One is for the man, the other is for the woman. So, if you're trying to make this verse deal with polygyny, that means when Timothy hits it again, that verse deals with polygamy also. So let's see here. Let's go. Let's go to 1 Timothy. Let's go to 5 and 9. Right here. It says, let not a widow be taken into the number under 80 years old, having been the wife of one man, well reported for good works. Having been the wife of one man. So, does this mean, because earlier we read the husband of one wife, so this right here says the wife of one man. So does this mean that they was practicing polyandry? Was it polyandry? Whatever you call it. Polyandry. But anyway, the woman having more than one husband. Is it saying that what was going on too? Could a woman have more than one husband? Was that going on and that had to be corrected too? Did he have to correct the man having more than one wife and then the wife having more than one husband? Of course not. This has nothing to do with polygamy. Just like in 1 Timothy 3, it had nothing to do with polygyny. It has nothing to do with it. It was talking about pretty much, right here, you see this is dealing with widow, right? The widow. So this is pretty much talking about how they view marriage in general, not the number of people that you were marrying. That's how they view marriage in general. So now, to show that, we can go to John 4:18. It says, Well, let's go to 16. Jesus said unto her, Go, call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had, past tense, 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that saidst thou truly. The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. So now, if women could have more than one husband, and if Timothy was addressing polygyny, which a woman can have more than one husband, then what would have been wrong with this woman having 5 husbands? And why wouldn't the person that she was with then be her husband? So in other words, we can see right now that she was just having sex with a man that wasn't her husband. Because the woman didn't deny it. She didn't try to argue with it. She didn't say, oh, he is my husband. I got a divorce, or he got a divorce, and his wife, blah, blah, this and that. He didn't say, none of that went on. So in other words, you can draw the conclusion that she was just out having sex, just having unmarriageable sex. But, and obviously, the person that she was having sex with was not trying to wife her. So obviously something was going on there, that she was having sex with some man. So that shows you that it's a little deeper anyway than sex is marriage, because if sex was married and then she was having sex with that man, then she would have been married to that man. So that's just something that we can look into later on. But this is just showing and perceive that the way that they viewed marriage was beyond just sex. You gotta have that connection and all that stuff, the dowry and the family and blah blah blah, this and that. But the point I'm trying to show you is that polygyny wasn't a thing. So Timothy could not have been addressing polygyny. And hopefully I'm saying that, polygyny. But we're at the point right now to show that Timothy wasn't speaking against polygamy. He wasn't speaking against polygyny. And he wasn't talking about polygyny. He was talking about the widowhood and how they view marriage in general. And we can see right here, Christ was actually correcting marriage throughout his whole time on earth. He was doing a lot of correction of the marriage because people had gone astray with these divorces, and obviously with just having sex just to have sex. But let's go to Deuteronomy 21, right? Let's go 15 through 17. Let's see what it says. It says, if inheritance rights for the firstborn, right? Don't forget, this is the Torah, straight from the Most High, right? He let it be done. It says, if a man, Deuteronomy 21 and 15. Once again, this is from the descendants of Shem, not the descendants of Japheth, right? This was a law for the descendants of Shem, the Israelites. It says, if a man have 2 wives, one beloved and another hated. All right, let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. Part right there. Now, how can a man have 2 wives if having 2 wives was prohibited? Let's think about it now. Why is it even in Torah? Why was it even mentioned? Okay, let's back up first. Let's back up. Let's go to Deuteronomy 17. Let's back up a little bit. Let's go to verse number... Let's start at 15. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose, one from among thy brethren, shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother, but he shall not multiply horses to himself. Okay, so first of all, what is he talking about? King, right? He's talking about a king. King. So just like we read about bishops, is this addressing every single person in Israel, or was this addressing a political figure? Just like when we read about the bishop. Was the bishop addressing every person in Israel, or was it addressing that spiritual figure? So this is addressing the political figure of the king that was set over the whole nation of Israel. So first of all, are you of that political king? Okay, so first of all, we should understand in context. We got to quit acting like we got to quit ignoring, which is pretty much the base of ignorance. We got to quit ignoring these words in order to push the Roman agenda. We have to quit ignoring words. We literally see the word king here. It's talking about a king, right? Let me get something. All right, now it says, "Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord shall choose. One from among thy brothers shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. But he shall not multiply horses to himself." Who shall not? The king. "Nor cause the people to return to Egypt." Who? The king. "To the end that he should multiply horses." Who? The king. The king cannot want to be overly abundant. Because once they concentrate on riches, just imagine you having somebody over you who only wants substance, who only want riches. He's going to put the citizens in a predicament, no matter if it's slavery, bondage, or whatever, in order to gain more and more riches. So what Moses was trying to do, he was trying to stop that dictatorship before it even started. But let's keep going. "For as much as the Lord has said unto you, you shall henceforth return no more that way." And that's what you see in Deuteronomy 28:68. You should return in Egypt again with ships, where therefore you should not see it no more again. This is where he's pulling that from. But anyway, "Neither shall he multiply wives to himself." Who? The king. "Neither shall the king multiply wives to himself." Why? That his heart not turn away. Sorry. That his heart turn not away. Okay, so now, Father, why did you say the king should not multiply wives? Did you say it because it's immoral? Did you say it because it wasn't the original setup? Did you say it because Adam and Eve was created and he was only created with one woman, Father? So you cannot have polygyny. It wasn't right. Is that why you said it, Father? No, the Father literally said why he did not want the king to have multiple wives, which was he did not want the king's heart, to be turned away from him. We can see this happening with Solomon. This was all a precursor, tried to prevent things from happening, but it happened anyway. So then you you see why I didn't want you to have multiple wives? Look what they did to you, king, not citizens, not everyday citizen, to the king. And look, this is what people leave out. "Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold." So just like he couldn't multiply horses, he was not supposed to multiply silver and gold. Why can't people leave that out? When people go in there, you see, you can't have multiple wives. You see, first of all, it says the king in context. The king cannot have multiple wives because he didn't want the king's heart to be turned away. But when people they leave out in the same verse, a few words afterwards, neither greatly multiply himself silver and gold. Now, why come I don't see people talking about we don't need to be rich? We don't supposed to be rich. Why come I don't see that? Ain't that right there too? Isn't that there? People that conveniently leave out the rich part. They just conveniently leave out the rich part. Oh no, we can be rich. You can go work all the time you want. You can go get your overtime. You can have a high paying job. Yeah, no, you can do all that because they tell you in polygyny, right? This is the argument that our brothers and sisters against polygyny try to tell you. They try to tell you you can't have more than one wife because you can't afford them. Well, right here, it's telling me I don't supposed to be rich. So I can never afford it. So I can never have more than one wife. Because if I get rich, I'm going against the Most High. But hopefully we see that now. So now let's go back to Deuteronomy 21. All polygyny, y'all. 15 through 17. If a man have two wives, right? So this is a little bit after when he said a king should not multiply his wives. Now he's saying the regular, everyday citizen. You see how he's addressing it? The regular, everyday citizen. What was going to happen if he have two wives? One beloved and another hated. And they have born children. Right? Sorry, y'all. One beloved and another hated, and they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated. And if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he had, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he hath, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. So, this should not even be in the talking if a man cannot have more than one wife. What up, Mr. Tony? How you doing, brother? Big bro. So now, that shouldn't even be in talking, right? All right, let's go on. Let's go on. Let's see something. Exodus 21. Let's go to let's see right here. Let's go right here. Exodus 21. Let's start at verse 7. If a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do. If she please not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed. To sell her into a strange nation, he shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. If he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do these three unto her, then shall she go out free without money. So now, let's see what's going on right here. It says, this is dealing with the Hebrew servant, right? If thou buy a Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve, and blah, blah, blah. And if his master has given him a wife, this is the servant, and she have borne him sons and daughters, the wife and her children shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself. So the master, the children, the son and the daughter and the children belong to the master, and the Hebrew servant shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. So if the servant don't want to leave after his time is up, then his master shall bring him into the judges. He shall also bring him to the door unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. So the master will keep the servant forever because the servant don't want to leave his daughter, or don't want to leave his wife and kids. And if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do. So the daughter will stay inside. The servants, the men servants, would leave. Right? If she please not her master, who hath betrothed her to himself. So now, this is if he had betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed. To sell her into a strange nation, he shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. So if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, right? And then the master don't want the woman, then he shall not let her be redeemed, and he shall sell her to somebody else. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manners of daughters. So if he has the woman, right? He don't like the woman. I'm thinking this is what it's saying. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking this is what he's saying. If the daughter is sold to the master, right, and the master don't want her, and he betrothed that daughter or that maidservant to his son, he has to treat that maidservant like his daughters. And if he take another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. And if he do these three things unto her, then she go out free without money. So, this is what I'm getting with this. If he take another wife, right? He was betrothed to this one wife, he gives it to his son. Then he takes another wife. Her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. So let me see what we got over here before I give my commentary. It says the father takes another wife for his son, or the son takes another wife to himself, after he has betrothed and married his father's maidservant. Neither deny it in whole, nor less it in part, but give her full due of each, which is meant by the two former words of each to admit. The latter is different. So let me see, Jewish. Okay, so in other words, it's saying polygyny right here, which is what I'm getting from it. But I'm getting that what he's saying is he cannot force the daughter, force the one that he was betrothed to, that he gave to his son. Since he didn't like her, he cannot make her not do things for her son. That's what I'm getting from it. But it could be just exactly what it say, which he cannot diminish his duty of marriage if he gets another wife. But I'm gonna do an actual study on that too. But it says, look at the three things she has to have, right? Raiment. Let's see what raiment is. Raiment. Cover. Duty of marriage, which is sex. And food. So as long as she has food, she's covered, and they have sex, everything is straight. So I don't know why you have to be rich to give her food, clothes, and sex. I don't know why you have to be rich to do that. It's just food. You have to eat yourself. Clothes. You have to have clothes yourself. And then sex. So for people that, oh, you got to be rich in order to do that. No. If this is what we're getting from this verse, you only have to provide the food, clothes, and sex. I don't know where y'all get. You got to have a whole different house. You got to give her a Bentley. You got to be a rich man. You got to be a superhero. I don't know where y'all got all that from. You got to just give her the basics. If you don't like her, you can't treat her despitefully when you get another woman. That's all it's saying. You can't treat her despitefully when you get another woman. All right. But let's go into some more things. I want to go to Josephus, right? Y'all know I like Josephus. Let's see here. I want to go to, let's see if I can find it real fast. And I didn't have this one labeled, which I should have. But let me see if I can find it real fast. We got the Sodomites, Abraham. That's not it. Let's see here. All right, right here. This is Antiquities of the Jews, right? Antiquity of the Jews, chapter 10, section 4. Come to me real fast. Okay, here we go right here. Hey, yeah, man, everybody left, man. You know, hey, where everybody go? They don't, where we at? Where everybody go? But anyway, we're gonna keep going on. We're gonna keep making it because some things that we just gotta learn. We gotta know. We gotta understand this stuff. We're talking about polygyny, right? And I done already went through how the Romans felt about marriage, which was the sons of Japheth, right? So now we're going into the Hebrew scriptures, right? And the Hebrew information. This is the people, the descendants of Shem. And we say that we are the descendants of Shem. And we can find polygamy in the descendants of Ham too. So Japheth was the ones, and not all of Japheth, just mainly the Greeks and the Romans really was the ones who didn't like polygyny, even though they practiced polygyny, as in having sex with their slaves, dealing with marriage. They only wanted monogamy. They wanted to have sex whoever they wanted to, but dealing with marriage, only that one person. And we have adapted that same ideology and behavior today, being trained by the Romans in their culture. But that being said, people, we gotta realize, right? This Bible right here, this Bible that we have, okay, it was made from codexes, okay, and you can do your research dealing with codexes all you want to, and you see that the oldest codex we have dealing with the Torah and the Tanakh, it's going to go back to like 900 AD, 1000 AD, which is the 10th and 11th century. So what we're reading in the Bible, right, it comes from the 10th and 11th century. That's the oldest works that we have dealing with, and then you can go into the Dead Sea Scroll. But a lot of people don't like the Grecian stuff. So we're just talking about with the Hebraic documents, dealing with the Masoretic text. We have it from the 10th and 11th century, right? So you read stories, right? I want you to know that the stories that you read some of them have been edited and things by the Masoretes in the 10th and the 11th century, right? We have Josephus, who came 1st century, which was about 900, 1,000 years before the codex that the Masoretic text was created from. So we have Josephus, who have an older understanding, who had an older Torah compared to the Torah we have today in the King James Version Bible. That he knew more of the oral traditions, more of the oral stories. He had more of a Semitic understanding than what the Masoretes had, as well as what we have today. So I tend to believe Josephus a little bit more, since he lived thousands of years before the Masoret came out, the Masoretic text. So I believe his understanding in the way that he would have known things from oral tradition more than I would understand, than I would believe the Masoretic text. You know, I believe it all, but I believe that there's a lot of edited information in our Bible, a lot of errors and all that stuff. So, not saying that Josephus was free from error. He let it be known that he didn't have all of the history dealing with some of the things with the Greeks and all of that stuff. So he just got it from second-handed information, as well as, you know, the information that, second-handed sources. But let's look at the information from the older section, which is what Josephus had. Let's look at how he explained the story of what happened between Abraham and Sarah. Because in the Bible that we have, in the Masoretic text that we have that Sarah, she made the decision not to wait on the Most High, to give Abraham Hagar, because she wasn't able to wait. You know, she wanted to put destiny in her own hands. And we have Peter saying all women should look up to Sarah. She called Abraham Lord. She was very submissive. But if she had this gigantic flaw of not wanting to wait on the Most High, then why is Peter telling the women to look up to her? You know what I'm saying? But let's see what was said in the older tradition of what happened between Sarah and Abraham. Don't forget, y'all, we're talking about polygyny and how the Semitics, the descendants of Shem, who we're supposed to be descendants of Shem, how they viewed marriage and polygyny. So let's dive into what Josephus have. Okay, so we're in the Antiquity of the Jews, chapter 10, right? That was chapter 10, book 1, section 4, and I'm just going to read it right here. Hopefully we all can see it. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Hopefully we all see it. It says, now Abraham dwelt near the oak called August. The place belongs to Canaan, not far from the city of Hebron. But being uneasy at his wife's barrenness, he entreated God to grant that he might have male issue. And let me make it a little bit bigger. Let me make it a little bit bigger. That he might have male issue. And God required of him to be of good courage, and said that he would add all of the rest of the benefits that he had bestowed upon him. Let me get this right here. Sorry, God. Ever since he led him out of Mesopotamia, the gift of children. Accordingly, Sarah, at God's command. Hold on now. Hold on. Shut the front door. What happened? Accordingly, Sarah, at God's command. Now, hold on now. I thought the Masoretic text that we have in the King James Version Bible that came 1,000 years after this was written by Josephus, I I thought it said that Sarah was impatient and she brought Hagar into Abraham. I thought it was Sarah who was impatient and she jumped the gun. And that's why Abraham was tricked into polygyny. I thought that's what happened. Well, we have an older account. And this older account, for the people who say, God, his plan wasn't for polygyny. It was for monogamy. Look at Adam and Eve. It wasn't for polygyny. Well, let's see what the ancient Israelites thought that God, the Father, the high power, did. Accordingly, Sarah, at God's command, brought to his bed one of her handmaidens, a woman of Egyptian descent, in order to obtain children by her. And when this handmaid was with child, she triumphant and ventured to affront Sarah, as if the dominion were to come to a son to be born of her. But hold on now. Hold on. Accordingly, Sarah, at God's command, gave Abraham Hagar. At who command? At God's command. Who did this polygynous union? God's command. Not Sarah's command. Not Abraham listening to Sarah. Not Sarah having dominion over Abraham and she doing some unrighteous act. It said in the older version that God commanded Sarah give Abraham another wife to bring forth children. Who? God commanded polygyny. Who commanded it? God. Not Sarah, not Abraham, God. See, this is the older version. This ain't the Masoretic text right here, y'all. This is 1,000 years before the Masoretic text. This is ancient Semitic understanding. This ain't what you have today from the Americans. This ain't what the so-called Jewish man is teaching you. This ain't what the Romans or the Grecians is teaching the descendants of slaves. Because this is how we identify ourselves. This ain't what we have been taught. We haven't been taught true Semitic oral tradition. We have been taught Masoretic text understanding. Two totally different things. So now, here we have God commanded this polygynous relationship. So I don't want nobody talking about God don't like polygyny. He never did polygyny. It was monogamy. You don't know what the Father wants. You're not the Father. His will is not our will. His ways is not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. You're trying to use our little brains to be on par with a creator to look at a story, which Adam and Eve was actually a myth anyway, if you actually do the research. Every Semitic culture, as well as Japhetic culture, as well as Hamitic culture, had a way, had an ideology on how humanity begun. This is just the Semitic way on how humanity begun, using the ideology of Adam and Eve and how the Israelites came to be a people and how the new covenant was going to come and save all of mankind. This is the Semitic story for my people who actually take the book of Adam and Eve or the story of Adam and Eve to be literal. You're supposed to learn a lesson from it. This is why Christ quoted from Moses using the story of Adam and Eve to teach a lesson. And he used the lesson of marriage. It was to teach a lesson, not to say this is exactly what happened, this is blah, 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 this and that. But let's keep going. Let's keep going now. We can also look at the antiquity of the Jews, right? Let's go back up. Antiquity of the Jews. Let's go to book 17. Chapter 1. Let's look at section 2. All right. let's go. Let's see here. Here we go right here. I'm just going to start right here. I'm not going to read all of it. Let's read once again more of the Semitic ancient understanding. This ain't what the Greeks gave us, okay? This ain't what the Jewish man who knows who he is, the Ashkenazi, and just in case, Ashkenazi, wasn't he a descendant of Japhet too? The same Jewish man who lets you know that he's an Ashkenazi Jew, which is a convert, isn't the Ashkenazi, wasn't they descendants of Japhet too? Before, hold on. I know I don't need to venture off, but just see. Is it Genesis 10? Right here. Look, y'all, Genesis 10:2. The sons of Japhet. You go to verse 3. The sons of Gomar, Ashkenaz. The same Ashkenazi Jews. The same one who's teaching you Torah right now. The Jewish man who was a convert, who maybe had some of the records, who made up a lot of that oral tradition, but and called it a midrash and the Talmud, which I have it here. If I can go get it out the back if I wanted to. But look, the sons of Japhet. Don't forget Javan, monogamous. Chittim, where Chittim at? Kittim, right here, monogamous. And then Ashkenaz, which is the same son of Japhet, teach monogamy. Is it strange that everybody from Japhet descent teaches monogamy? All of our monogamous views come from the descendants of Japhet, and the people who enslaved us and brought us over here and taught us are the descendants of Japhet. Is it strange that most people don't believe and don't like polygyny? A lot of these monogamous people are very educated in the system of the Romans. They're highly intelligent, dealing with the history and dealing with the agriculture, dealing with all of the social norms of the Romans. They have learned all they could from the Romans, and they are highly intelligent, have great vernacular, they sound like professors, sound like doctors. They can teach, they can enunciate. And you got me, I'm all country, stuttering. I don't formulate my sentences right, even though I have a degree too. A lot of people look at me as below because the way I talk, but we have all of these people that's very high in stance and standards, very educated in this system from the Romans. A majority of them hates polygyny. Don't want to talk about polygyny. Is it a coincidence? But anyway, now we're done with that. I just wanted to throw that out there. I like throwing different information out. But now, let's see what this ancient understanding says. He also allotted one of Aristobulus' daughters to Antipater's son, so I don't like the Roman name, and Aristobulus' other daughter to Herod, a son of his own, who was born to him by the high priest's daughter. For it is the ancient practice among us to have many wives at the same time. Who was talking? Josephus. What was Josephus? He was a priest. He was a Pharisee. He was a southern kingdom. He was a Jew. He was an ancient Israelite. He was a black man, melanated. He had the ancient Torah. He knew the oral tradition. He knew the ancient understanding. And from the ancient understanding that he had, and if he had it, are we going to say he's the only one who had it? No, it was all among the Israelites back then. For it is the ancient practice among us to have many wives at the same time. The Semitic people, it was a practice among them to have many wives at the same time. An ancient practice in the days of Josephus. So, why are you calling yourself a descendant of Shem? Now you have a problem with your culture. It's your culture, and you have a problem with it. Your culture. You have a problem with it because the Romans told you to have a problem with it. But let's keep going on. Okay. All right. Let's go to War of the Jews now. That's the antiquities of the Jews to tell you all of the ancient history about the Jews. So now let's go to the War of the Jews, which led up to the destruction of Jerusalem, right? So the War of the Jews, book 1, chapter 24, section 2. Let's start right here. She also frequently reproached Herod's sister and wives. So we see that Herod, who was a Jew convert, but he had some Jew in his lineage too, if you actually go through the history. But anyway, so Herod had wives. So Herod practiced polygyny with the ignobility of their descent, and that there were everyone chosen by him for their beauty, but not for their family. Now those wives of his were not a few. So y'all don't know that people considered Herod a Jew because he was a convert. They considered him a Jew, and he had Jew Semitic blood in him. So they referred to him as a Jew, and he took the practice of the Jews. But now let's see them. But those who were of his were not a few. It being of old permitted to the Jews to marry many wives, and this king delighting in many. So it was permitted of the Jews. Now, where did it say? Where did it say that the Jews had to be rich? Where did it say it had to be rich Jews in order to have many wives? This is what people do in order to make it seems like polygyny is just impossible to do in America, or polygyny is impossible for the common man to do it. You see right here, it was permitted to the Jews as a race to marry many wives. Not just rich Jews. Any Jew could marry any wife that he could pay a dowry for. It was permitted to the Jews. It being of old. Now who did it? It being of old permitted the Jews to marry many wives, and that the king delighting in many. So Herod took advantage of the Jews being able to marry many wives. Herod took advantage of it. You don't have to take advantage of it, but Herod took advantage of it. But this is my question. Who permitted the Jews to marry many wives? Who permitted it? Who could permit such a thing? This is straight from the Most High, straight from the Father. This ain't what the Romans can do. This ain't what the Jews could do. This ain't what the Persians. This ain't what the Hamites. This is nothing. This marriage belongs to the Father. He the one that came up with the construct of becoming one flesh. He took woman from man's flesh, creating two individuals. So what marriage does, it restarts off creation. How it put man in his original state of one flesh, one woman, feminine, masculine, completeness. This is what marriage represents. It's not about the number of individuals. It's about what it represents. The beginning stage of man when he was in connection with himself. He was 100% pure. This is the story Sorry. Oh, yeah, I already know, sister. I already know. This is the story of what Adam and Eve actually represented. Once again, it was mythos. It was to prove a point. And you have to go into the Aramaic and all of that stuff and get some Aramaic commentary, as y'all know I do, in order to understand the meaning behind the Garden of Eden. Because people take it literal without understanding that the Father is a poet. He's a storyteller. He know that we're dumb, so he has to give us his understanding in story form, hoping that we understand the point. And this was the point. Mankind started off together, separated into two different individuals, one masculine, one feminine. The only way that we could be complete with that masculine and feminine energy being 100% at one is through marriage. Through marriage. Man needs woman. Woman needs man in order to be complete. It doesn't depend on the number. It depends on the connection. That's all that was going on. But anyway, it being of old permitted to the Jews to marry many wives. The only person that can permit it was the Most High. Sorry, y'all. This is Semitic. This is ours people. I said ours. This is our people culture. Okay? This is for us. We don't learn our culture from Japhet. We don't learn our culture from the Romans. We don't learn our culture from the Grecians. We learn our culture from the Semitics, the Shemites, however you want to say it, the Israelites. We have it here in history. How the Most High allowed Israel to deal with themselves. So now, that's the book of Josephus. So now, let's go to the scripture now. Let's go to scripture now. Because y'all know we'll hit some scriptures up. Let's go to scripture now. Let's go to Matthew. I'm going to try to give y'all a different view to look at this. Let's go to Matthew 19. Right. Matthew 19. Let's read 3 through 6. It says, the Pharisees. So once again, Matthew, right? This is Semitic literature translated in Greek, not originated for the Grecian mind, originated for the Semitic mind. Christ lived in a polygynous culture. Once again, Christ and Josephus lived in the same time period. Not the same era, but the same time period. They both was first century. They both lived in the first century. So now, Christ lived in the same polygynous culture that Josephus lived in. So now, understand the culture before we start reading what's being said. So this is a polygynous culture theme that's being talked about. So now, Matthew 19 and 3. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him. So everybody understand, this is a temptation, tempting him to check his understanding. And saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Okay, y'all. So the point was divorce, not marriage, but divorce. And the Pharisees were saying, is it lawful for a man to put away a woman just because he wants to? Has nothing to do with polygyny. Okay? Nothing to do with polygyny. Is it okay for a man to put away a woman just because he wants to? So now, let's look how Christ responded. And he answered and said unto him, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning, made them male and female. So now, understand what's going on now. So now Christ is going back to the Torah. Okay, in the beginning, he made them male and female. Two individuals. So let's keep reading. And said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. Now what happened? Male and female. And just because they are male and female, they will have to leave. A man will leave his father and cleave to his wife. So now, they are two, and let me read the rest of them so I can get the point. And they twain shall be one flesh, wherefore they are not no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God had joined together, let no man put asunder. So now, this is what was said. They're man and woman. In the beginning, he created them, man and woman. There was one flesh. He separated them, man and woman. And since they are separated, the man must leave his father and to be or to cleave with his woman in order to be one flesh. The point of separating the man from the woman was to make them feel incomplete until they came back together. Once again, the point was, we got to understand what's being said here. The point was, he separated them for them to feel incomplete and want to come together again. Once again, for this cause. What cause? Them being male and female. That's the cause. Since they're man and female, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Because they are separated. Because they are male and female, a man has to want that connection, who has to want that completion. And the only way a man can get to their original state of completion is with a woman, with a wife. It doesn't matter the number. The action is the point. Him cleaving to his wife to become one flesh. So, when a man gets a woman, he's getting his perfection back. That scale, that yin and yang is coming back in completionness or fulfilledness, or however you want to put it. That was the point. He separated them in order for them to want to come back together, because the Most High has always been about family. He has always, what did he tell the animals in the beginning? Be fruitful and multiply. What did he tell the man and the woman? Be fruitful and multiply. It was always about family and them increasing the population on earth. But let's keep reading. Verse 7. They say unto him, because don't forget, the main question they had was, can a man divorce a woman for any cause? So first of all, Christ explained to them what the purpose of marriage was. Them being separated and coming back together, that's what marriage is. So now, don't forget, it was all about divorce. They asked him about divorce, not polygyny. They asked him about divorce. He responds back with an explanation dealing with marriage. So now he's going to hit what divorce is, because he never really hit that question. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of the divorcement and to put her away? So Christ, you're talking about marriage. We asked you about divorce. You're telling us that a man is supposed to stay with a woman And that union, nobody can do away with that union. You're telling us about marriage, Christ. We asked you about divorce. This is what his response was. He said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. Now, who did it? Did the father do it? No. Was divorce because of the father? No. The father never wanted divorce. He never wanted to divorce the northern kingdom. The father never wanted divorce. Moses allowed it. So this lets you know that Moses had a hand in writing the Torah. Once again, for everybody, the Torah came straight from the Father. No, the Ten Commandments came from the Father. He came down and later on, he gave them the rest of the Torah. So now, this lets you know that Moses, some of Moses' ideology is also within Torah. Moses was just a man. Moses had Egyptian understanding. Moses was taught by the Egyptians. Moses was bright. He used some of his ideology also in creating the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, in order for the people who think that the Bible is 100% scribed by the Most High without understanding that mankind can influence the words. Moses himself influenced this part in order to adhere to the hardness of mankind's heart. But anyway, let's keep going. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. Now, what happened in the beginning? What do he mean from in the beginning? He said it up here. In the beginning, made them male and female. And for that, a man shall leave his mother and cleave to his wife and be one flesh. In the beginning, from the beginning, it was marriage, not divorce. This is what he's saying. They're asking him about divorce, and he let it be known that divorce wasn't in the beginning. The point was for marriage. Not one man, one woman. The point was marriage. Period. Man, woman, marriage. Because what was one of the first commandments? Be fruitful and multiply. So how are you being fruitful and multiplying when you're divorced and separated? You're being separate. How are you being fruitful and multiplying? See, all of this have way more meanings than what people is trying to put on it because of their own preconceived notions and how they want to hate their culture so much that they will misuse these scriptures in order to give it a Grecian and Roman understanding so they can promote such ridiculousness as monogamy and how that is the standard of the Most High. Well, Christ is letting it be known that in the beginning it was all about marriage, not divorce. Why the Pharisees was concentrated on divorce. They hit him up with a question about divorce, not marriage, not polygyny, but divorce. And Christ's response dealt with marriage. And I said unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committed adultery, and whosoever married her, which is put away, doth commit adultery. So Christ let it be known that through fornication, a woman becoming one flesh with another man outside of that first man. See, she was flesh with one man, and then she become flesh with another man. All of that is fornication, and it's pretty much spiritual fornication. But anyway, let's see if we can describe this a little bit better. Yeah, indeed, with the homosexuality and all this stuff. We didn't do that. That's all Roman construct. But look what it says. Because it's saying now that a man commits adultery, and a woman can commit adultery if they put each other away. If a man put away a woman for no reason, then he's committing adultery too. And how can a man commit adultery if adultery only works with a woman being married? Well, the Bible is going to actually give it a different perspective. We got to understand, we're reading Matthew's words right now, right? We're reading how Matthew actually viewed the conversation. So Matthew is expecting you to have a Hebraic understanding when, or a cultural understanding when reading these words. So, for us who don't have a cultural understanding, we're going to go into more of the book, and then we're going to put it together. We're going to put it all together to understand what is being said here. But just know, whosoever shall put away his wife, that's divorce, right? Except it be for fornication, and shall marry another. So Christ didn't say whosoever marries a woman and then marries another commit adultery. He said whosoever put a woman away for no cause and marry another commits adultery. Once again, let me say it again. Christ didn't say whosoever marries a woman and marries another woman commits adultery. That's what polygyny is, y'all. Christ never said that. He lived in the polygynous culture. Christ said, whosoever marries a woman and then put her away for no reason and then marry another woman commits adultery. That's what he said. He never spoke against polygyny. He never spoke against multiple marriages between a man having multiple wives. He said a man can't sit up here and divorce another woman just because he wants to and then marry another. No, that's not what was created in the beginning. And since you are doing that action, you have the consequences of being considered an adulterer by me and by the Father. But let's go somewhere else too, because this wasn't Christ's first time saying it. Christ actually said this again. So let's go to Matthew 5. Well, he said it earlier. Go to Matthew 5. And for everybody, you got to understand the point behind all of this stuff. Christ was trying to teach the purpose or the meaning behind the original goals of mankind. The original goals of mankind wasn't slavery. It wasn't divorcement. It wasn't for them to be in a low state, and it wasn't curses. So Christ was giving them the true meaning behind mankind, what mankind was supposed to be doing, their purpose. But let's go to Matthew 5, 31 and 32. See, look, he's hitting divorce again. He hit divorce in Matthew 5 before the Pharisees came in Matthew 19 asking him about it. And listen to what he said in Matthew 5. It had been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. Causes who? Causes her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committed adultery. So the first time Christ was speaking it, he was saying the woman, you're forcing the woman to commit adultery. But when Christ started talking to the Pharisees, he told them the man and the woman is committing adultery. Do you get what's going on here? He was being more stricter to these law people because they're supposed to know the law. So he was giving them a more stricter construct. Since they was coming with all this temptation, he gave them a stricter version. But for the average everyday people who knew the things outside of the law, you know, these were just your average everyday citizens, unlike the Pharisees who were the law keepers, who were the law teachers. He said that if a man put away a woman for no cause except for fornication, he causes her to commit adultery, and whosoever married that woman commits adultery. But why? Why? Because the original goal was for man and woman to be united, not separated. The original goal was for man and woman to be united, not separated. The only way they were supposed to be separated is if the woman, now look where, y'all, we got to understand these words. Whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication. So who's putting away the woman? The man is putting away the woman. The man is giving the bill of divorce. So Christ lived in a polygynous society, right? So what if this man had 2 wives? What if he had 3 wives? What if he had 4 wives? What if he had 5 wives? Christ let it be known. You cannot put away any one of the wives except for fornication. Don't forget, he lived in a polygynous society. Now, let me give y'all a construct real fast, dealing with the word wife and wives, because people want to play on the singularity and the plurality of things. People like, see, it says wives, wife, singular, not wives, plural. So they forget how we talk. So now, let me give you an example. Let's say you're a classroom teacher, right? And if you're a classroom teacher, let's say you have a classroom full of 30 students, and you tell those 30 students, well, you have a rule on the board that says you must raise your hand before speaking, right? Is that talking to one student and saying that only one student has to raise their hand and everybody else don't have to raise their hand? Because that's singular, not plural. It says you must raise your hand, which is hand, not hands, 2. So does that mean that if you don't raise both, does that mean that, and I'm trying to get it straight, does that mean that everybody in the classroom has to apply by that rule, which seems like it's only talking to one person? Of course, even though it's using a singularity, it's dealing with the collective. It's dealing with the whole class. Even though it's addressing, it seems like it's addressing an individual one-on-one, it's still for the collective. It's still for the whole class. The whole class still must raise their hand to speak, but the rule says you must raise your hand before you talk. That's teaching. That's how you teach. So even though it's a whole group of people out there, he don't have to address it like it's plural. He can address it like it's singular. Yes, a husband cannot divorce his wife. He don't have to say a husband cannot divorce his wives, because it's understood that he's talking to the collective. He's talking to the assembly. He's talking to everybody, what they have to do individually in order to please or appease the Most High. That's all that's being said. Hopefully that made sense. But, so we have it here. So don't forget, Christ lived in a polygynous society. So he's talking to these males about divorcing. Whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. Man, you cannot put away one of your wives and then go marry another one. You cannot do this because y'all are messing up the society. And this, as you can tell, for him to repeat it and for the Pharisees to bring it up, this is what was going on in their culture. And the Pharisees said for every cause would let you know that they was divorcing women just to divorce them, no matter what the cause was. And Christ let it be known this was not the original plan. The original plan was marriage, not multiple, or sorry, not monogamy or polygyny. It was marriage. It didn't matter if it was monogamy or polygynous, because they didn't deal with the wives having several husbands. They didn't do that. They never did that in the Eastern world. The Semites calling that righteous. They never did that. It's more than Hermetic. But the point is, Christ was letting it be known that the goal was marriage. No matter if it's one person or 5 or 10 people, the goal was marriage, not separation. That was the goal. And we can, let's see if we just got one more. You got Mark 10, 11 through 12. All right, and this is what the disciples said. And in the house, the disciples asked him again the same matter. And he said unto them, whosoever shall put away his wife and marry another, committed adultery against her. And if a woman shall put away her husband, so now they're saying that women could put away her husband and be married to another, she committed adultery. See, we got to understand that the different audience, like Luke was addressing more of the Greeks. Mark was addressing more of the Aramaic speakers, and Matthew was addressing more of the Hebrew or the Hebraic speakers. So we're looking at it from more of a Hebraic mindset to an Aramaic mindset to a Grecian mindset. The Gospels was hitting all of the culture. So you had the Grecian and the Latin mindset. This is what Luke was hitting on. You had the Aramaic mindset, which is what Mark was hitting on. And you had Matthew's mindset, which the Hebrews was hitting on. So this is why it seems like they're all saying different things, but it's the same point. This is how incredible or how important the Gospels is. It took you from different perspectives dealing with the different cultures that was back then. They gave you the perspective from the culture or from that culture understanding back then. But now, so we see even the disciples had, in Mark's version, even the disciples had a problem with it. The disciples like, hold on, let's talk about this divorce again. Because they grew up in the polygynous society. They grew up in a society where you could divorce whoever you wanted to. So they was like, what? Hold on, let's talk about this again. So now he told them again. Once again, the point was divorce, and Christ was letting it be known that the beginning, it was all about marriage, not divorce. You see, they took adultery very seriously back then. You could die for adultery. So this is why the stress on adultery. It let you know how serious it was. And Christ was letting it be known that the Father put you here to be married, to cleave, to be one flesh, not to be separated, not to be out here sexing each other, not for this man to be with that husband and that man to be cheating with that wife. That's not what the Father put you here for. The Father put you here to get you and your family straight. No matter if it's one wife or 2 wives or 3 wives or 4 wives, you're going to be one flesh with that union. It's a union, one flesh, just like Christ. And Christ is the perfect example. Let me come back to me now. Christ is the perfect example. He's married to many people, but it's one corporate body. Once again, hold on, sorry, y'all. I can't add you to the video because I'm on my I'm on a different screen. I'm on my television screen. So the way my television is set up, I'm not on Facebook. I'm on. I wish I could show you, but I'm on my television, and it's going through this program, whatever this is. What is this program? What is it? I had to tell you, I can't even think of the program. It don't have a name. It's the same program that Mr. Bell used. But anyway, so it don't allow me to add an extra person on. But I don't. Hey, whatever. But let me get back to it. but whatever. But once again, I'm talking from the Semitic understanding. Semitic. This is, we call ourselves Israelites. This is coming from the Semitic understanding, not the Japhet or the Hamitic. Okay? We're not coming from Hamite's perspective. We're not coming from Japhet's perspective. We're coming from Shem's perspective, and they actually lived in a polygynous society. The construct that you see differently, and then I'm going to go back into Christ. The construct you see differently is, at this time, Rome was a part of the Semitic construct, and the Semites was a part of the Roman construct. So you have some Jews back then who had already assimilated to the Grecians and the Romans' way of thinking. So you have most of them, well, a majority of them, being monogamous because they learned this from assimilating with the Romans. Us and some of us in America, we have assimilated with the Roman ideology. Y'all know that. They control the schools. They control history. They rewrite anything they want to. They did whatever they did to the maps. They make you believe that Europe is the same size of Africa and all that other ridiculousness. So we're going from a Semitic mindset, a Semitic construct. So just like Christ is, he's married to the assembly, right? And an assembly have millions upon millions of men and women, but they're one corporate body, one union. The church make up the body of Christ. One corporate body with many members. The same way that your household could be, the same way your one flesh could be. We're one flesh with Christ, just like your wives. One wife, two wives, three wives, four wives. It's all your union. It's all them being one flesh with you. All being together with you. Your union, your corporate union, is that one flesh being combined just like Christ. So, let's keep going. Sorry about that, y'all. Hopefully that analogy made sense. So let's go to something else real fast. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 7 and 1 and 2. Right? Because this is something else that people like to use. Now, concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Look, it is good for a man not to touch a woman, right? So, we see this right here. And look, this is the principles for marriage, right? So we see right here, right? Christ said in the beginning, man and woman were supposed to cleave to each other, right? So now, is this Paul saying that man and woman should not cleave together? Is Paul going against the original construct that man and woman should be together? No. He's just giving the opinion, right? Well, he said, it is good for, this is what they wrote unto, and later on Paul said he wished that everybody was like him. But this is just his opinion, right, on how he personally deals with things. So he's not really touching the subject of polygyny, per se. He's just talking about his own personal thing. But this is how people want to address this, right? Nevertheless, to avoid fornication. Don't forget, y'all, fornication was a big thing then, and especially in the first century. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. So now, this is what people run to. You see, it says, let every man have his own wife. That would be singular. One man needs to have one woman needs to have one man. This is what, and then they say this is what Paul was trying to teach. Let's see. Let me just make sure. And you see here, own could mean him, my, our, yourself, himself, itself, they, their selves, and blah, 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 this and that. So it doesn't mean, it don't have to automatically mean a singular. But this is what people run to. You let every man have his own wife and every woman have her own husband. You see, this right here proves that that monogamy was the way. Don't forget now, Paul, being raised in Rome, he was a Roman citizen. He was used to seeing monogamy, but he also was an Israelite, and he knew that his culture was polygynous. But was Paul talking about monogamy or polygynous? Is this what he was addressing right here? Was he trying to adhere to all the monogamy people and say, hey, all you polygynous people inside of Israel, all you polygynous people inside of the land of Judea, all you polygynous people that's going around in Corinth, all of you guys need to be monogamous, like the Romans. If this is what Paul was talking about, well, let's just venture back just a little bit further. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 5, 1 and 2. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as it is not as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. So now, what was going on that Paul was addressing, dealing with the assembly of the Corinthians? It was one. See now, Paul is addressing a specific incident. Okay? He's addressing something that happened, and it says one person, right? One should have. So now, he's not addressing the whole community and saying the whole community is doing this. He's literally writing a letter addressing certain instances. And we are to learn from the letter. We are to learn from this issue, just like they was to learn from the issue. And this was the issue. A man had his father's wife. And we see this dealing with the 12 patriarchs. Who was that? Was it Reuben? I might be wrong, but was it Reuben who had his father's wife? And they made it a law that you can do. But anyway, you cannot cover your father's nakedness. And according to the Aramaic commentary, that meant a man could not have sex with his father's wife or wives or concubines. This is what the Aramaic commentary says, not to uncover your father's nakedness. This is what that means in the Aramaic commentary. So I'm not Aramaic, so I don't know. I can only read what the Aramaic commentary says. But now, and ye are puffed up and have not rather mourned, that he that had done this deed might be taken away from among you. So now, we see the setup. The setup was, Paul is addressing that a man was having sex with his father's wife. So now, hopefully this put a little bit more in perspective. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. Don't be out there sexing your people's wives. You have your own union. Stay within your union. You don't need to be out here wife swapping. You don't need to be out here doing these rituals. Stay within your union. Have your own wife. Now, once again, it's a collective thing. Does Paul have to say wives here in order for it to be understood that he's talking to people that's dealing with polygyny? Does it have to literally say wives? And now imagine this now. You're practicing polygyny, right? Let's say you're living back then in the 1st century. You're openly practicing polygyny, and then they read this letter out loud to you. And it says, nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. And you're dealing with polygyny. Would you say, well, he ain't talking to me because I got 3 or 4 wives. So he can't be talking to me. So I can have any wife that I want to because I do polygyny. And he's only addressing people in monogamy. He's only addressing a person that has 1 wife. He's not addressing us guys back here who have multiple wives. So y'all, we don't have to worry about that portion of the letter. Of course not. Because it's wrote in a singular perspective, it does not mean that it's not for the collective. He's talking for everybody, monogamous and polygynous. He just letting it be known that you don't need to be out here wife swapping. You don't need to be out here fornicating. You don't need to be having your father's wife. You don't need to have your brother's wife. Because once again, could a person say, hey, in 1 Corinthians 5, right here, let's think about it. It says that a person should have his father's wife. So does that mean that a brother could have his brother's wife? Does that mean a cousin can have his cousin's wife? A slave could have his master's wife? A master could have his slave's wife? No, it's not. You got to understand the point of what's being said. He's not being literal and saying this is only for a man, a father, and a son. No, you got to understand what's being said. Even though it's written for a specific event, the people around it has to learn. No matter if it's monogamous or polygynous, the people around had to learn from the letter, had to learn from this statement. But I'm going to get ready to wrap it up. So now, 1 Corinthians 7:6. But I speak this by permission and not of commandment. So now we see that this is not a commandment. This is Paul just saying he has the right to speak upon what he wants to speak upon because he had the Holy Spirit and he's the one that's commanding this letter. Just like we would do today, we can say what we want to say. Sometimes we have rules and regulations, but we give our personal opinion also. But I speak this by permission and not by commandment. For I would that all men were even as myself, but every man has his proper gift of God, one after this manner and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with lust. So, is he saying, once again, this is dealing with the unmarried and the widows. Is he saying that, is he talking against polygyny? Is he talking against polygyny here? No, he's addressing marriage in general. If you cannot be abstinence from sex, because don't forget in the beginning, it was meant for man and woman to cleave together. But Paul is saying that, hey, if you cannot hold it in, go ahead and marry. He's not addressing monogamy or polygyny per se. He's addressing marriage. And until the married I commend, yet not I, but the Lord. Let not the wife depart from her husband. What is he hitting on? Once again, he's piggybacking off of what Christ was saying. This dealing with adultery. You cannot leave, the husband cannot leave the wife not leave the husband. The only way the husband can give a bill of divorce was for adultery. If not fornication, then you are to stay with that man forever through the good, the bad, and the ugly. You are to stay with that man forever. They was promoting marriage. It wasn't polygyny. It wasn't monogamy. They was promoting marriage. No matter if you had one spouse, a man had one spouse, or if a man had many spouses, because it was permitted to the Jews to have many spouses. It was permitted to the northern kingdom to have many spouses. This was a Semitic thing. So he's saying that if you become married, stay married. That's one of the themes in the Bible. Y'all need to understand this. This is to teach you how to conduct yourself in life. Many people, they get so caught up in the lessons, in the words of the Bible. They get so caught up in the story, they forget the lesson that what the Bible is teaching. They forget the point of this being wrote down, which was to teach a moral lesson. And one of the moral lessons was marriage here. But if she depart, let her remain unmarried. Why? Because if she don't, she would cause somebody else to commit adultery. So let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And let not the husband put away his wife. You see this? Put away his wife. But this is the same thing that the Pharisees were saying. This is the same thing that Christ was saying. It wasn't from the beginning that you were supposed to put away your wife. So now we have Paul re-saying the same thing, restating. Please don't put away your wives. Wives, stay with your husband. Husband, stay with your wife. Verse 12. But to the rest speak, I, not the Lord, I, not the Lord. So this is what Paul said. Paul saying, I'm saying it, not the Lord. If any brother has a wife that believeth not. So this is what Paul is saying. This is what he feels. This ain't from the Lord. This is from him. And she be pleased to dwell with him. Let him not put her away, because once again, no separation. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, if he please to dwell with her, let her not leave. Why? Because it wasn't no separation in the beginning. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. So we have it right there. Let's see. I'm gonna hit a few more. I'm about done, y'all. I promise I'm about done. This is this Romans 7:2. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. So even this is what Paul using the analogy of husband and wife dealing with Christ and all that stuff. But the point was the law. The law was meant for a wife to stay with a husband as long as he lived. No matter if it's polygyny or monogamy. And this was one of the things when people started going against Paul's teachings, right? This is when they was using Paul's teaching. This is how they could misuse Paul's teaching, because Paul said, I wish everyone was like me. You know, Paul wasn't married. So this was a, let's look how it's worded. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times, which was, they was living in the last days, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats which God had created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. Now, notice what it said here. Giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy. So now, understand, seducing spirit, doctrines of devil, lies in hypocrisy, forbidding to marry. So, if you tell a monogamous man, not a monogamous man, let me take this back. If you tell a man in a monogamous relationship that's willing to do polygyny, and he wants to do polygyny, that he cannot do polygyny because it's not ordained from the Most High, you are forbidding that man to marry, no matter how you look at it. If this man wants to practice his culture, and if he wants to have another wife, and you come up with some doctrine that forbids him to marry another woman, you are forbidding him to marry. And that is a seducing spirit, straight from the Romans, of course, a doctrine of devils, and its lies in hypocrisy. The Father never condemned it. He always let it go on. It was in the Torah. It was in the days of Christ. Christ never spoke against it. Nobody spoke against it except the Grecians and the Romans. The only people that spoke against it was the people who did not do it. And the people who did not do it, they became the world power. And they made the world go after their laws and to do the things that they wanted. The world had to follow the world power of Rome because this is Roman rulership. This is Roman laws. So, this is what's going on. This is called a seducing spirit, a doctrine of the devil, is lies and hypocrisy. For a person to tell you that you cannot marry another woman if you're already married, knowing good and well the Father let it be done since the beginning. That's what you call. Shalom, Queen. Shalom. So, that's a seducing spirit. That's a doctrine of devils. And that's lies and hypocrisy. For you to forbid a man to marry. Now, we ain't talking about homosexuality because this wasn't a society dealing with homosexuality. This was a society dealing with polygyny and monogamy, man and woman. So, if you forbid somebody to marry or try to teach somebody that ridiculousness, you yourself are speaking lies and hypocrisy. You have a doctrine of devils, and you are using seducing spirits to seduce me not to do something that the Most High allowed. So now, we're going to finish it up. Let's go to Genesis 1 through 7. Let's look at Abimelech, right? And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, she is my sister? And she even herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. So now you see, for a man to sleep with another man's wife is a sin against the Most High. That's why you see why adultery was so important. Why they used adultery. Why this person makes this person commit adultery. It's a sin against the Most High. Therefore suffer I thee not to touch her. So now, Abimelech, see, Abimelech wasn't he's not an Israelite, guys. So now, Abimelech, right, from another nation, right? This is before the Israelite guys. Okay, this is for Israel. This is before Israel. So now, for the people who say, polygyny was what the Jews practiced only. Well, Abimelech wasn't a Jew. Okay, he wasn't an Israelite. This to show you, and we can go into Genesis, other parts of Genesis, to show you that other people will practice polygyny too. So this shows you that polygyny was practiced in the East, outside of Israel. More people practice polygyny. But anyway, so let's go down to verse number 17. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. Hold on now. So Abimelech had a wife, and he was trying to take Sarah as his wife? So you mean to tell me Abimelech was fit to practice polygyny? And the Most High did not condemn polygyny? He did not condemn Abimelech for wanting to get Sarah as another wife, but he condemned Abimelech for wanting to get another man's wife. condemn him for polygyny. He condemned him for getting another man's wife. So, for my people to say polygyny is against the Most High, would this have not been the perfect time for the Most High to condemn polygyny? Or is it a polygyny just against Israelites, even though all Israelites did polygyny? Or are we saying polygyny is wrong because the Romans told us this in slavery? Do y'all know we came off the slave ships? Some of us came off the slave ships as Muslims. Did y'all know that? Some of us came off the slave ships with multiple wives. And they eventually, they made it a law that we couldn't have multiple wives. Did y'all know that we came fresh off the boat as a polygynous society? Fresh off the boat? Let's do some research, y'all. Let's do some research. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. So Abimelech, right? He had a wife. He was going to do polygyny. It was never, ever ostracized or talked bad about by the father. And then you can go to Genesis 26. I'm getting ready to wrap it up. Genesis 26, 6. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister, for he feared to say, She is my wife. Lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. So just like father, like son. He did the same thing his father did in the same area. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at the window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, Behold, of surety, she is thy wife, and has said thou, she is my sister. And Isaac said unto him, Because I said, lest I die for her. So in other words, they was wanting to make Rebekah, because obviously she was that beautiful, a wife to the king again. And do you believe that the king had more than one wife? Of course, the kings had more than one wife, which shows that the point, it wasn't against polygyny. It was telling the story about lying and all that stuff. It wasn't against polygyny. Jeremiah 3:8. And I saw, when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away. So now the father was married to Israel. He gave her a certificate of divorce and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also. So now, was the father just married to Israel? Or was he married to Israel and Judah? The father used the polygynous relationship in order to explain his will dealing with Israel and Judah. He used a polygynous relationship. Once again, even the father himself used and then you got Christ using the polygynous relationship, dealing with talking about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven was likened to 10 virgins waiting on their husband, which is a polygynous relationship. Now we have right here the father using marriage dealing with Judah and Israel in order to explain the harlotry of them both, which is a polygynous relationship. So the father himself uses polygyny. The father himself uses polygyny in many instances to explain ideology to us. So now, this is the last thing. Let's hit you with a little understanding. It says, is polygyny a slave to history? You can look this up yourself. Is polygyny a slave to history? How the slave trade patterns of centuries ago are still shaping African marriages today. This was by Alicia Whitmire, September 4th, 2014. It said, for decades, scholars have puzzled over why polygyny in Africa is concentrated in the continent's western countries. What's that? Guinea? What's that? Guinea? I don't know. Guinea, Togo, and Mali, among others. There are competing theories rooted in variables such as relative infant mortality rates and the agricultural roles women play in different parts of Africa. A new study, however, argues that the answer may be found somewhere else, darker and uglier, the slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade wildly disrupted West Africa's gender ratios, argued John Dalton and Ting Chiat Leong, economists from the Wake Forest University and the Chinese University of Hong Kong, respectively. West African slaves were mostly sent to the New World, where buyers strongly preferred men capable of performing back-breaking tasks on plantations. By contrast, buyers in the slave trade centered on the Indian Ocean and Red Sea were often looking for women who could work as domestic servants or concubines. Record keeping by European slave traders shows a consistent pattern between Dalton and Luong found. Between 1545 and 1864, 66.4% of slaves sent to North America and the Caribbean from present-day Senegal and Gambia were men, as well as 66.6% from Sierra Leone, 65.4% from the Gold Coast, now Ghana, and 65.4% from the Windward Coast, now Ivory Coast. Going a step further, Dalton and Leong looked at data on the slaves taken from specific ethnic groups and compared it with the percentage of women in those groups who today share husbands with other wives. They controlled for factors such as education level and religion. The researchers found that groups hit heavily by transatlantic slavery were significantly more likely to have a high percentage of polygynous marriages. Certainly, polygyny may have existed before the slave trade began. Of course it did. But this study suggests that slavery encouraged the practice by ensuring that there were fewer men available to be husbands to West African women. So in other words, even in Africa, where we came from, our counterparts understood if it was more women than men, then polygyny was the only option. Here in America, we have more black women than black men, so why come we don't understand that polygyny is the only option? Scholars are still sorting out the myriad ways in which slavery has affected Africa, how it influenced economics, trust level among groups, and the continent's balance of power. That its impact extends to marriage shouldn't come such as a surprise, Dalton says. It's merely a reminder of how deeply slavery scarred every layer of African life. So we have, even in African, even today, polygyny being bound. We have from the Muslim polygyny. So why do we come in America? We come in America so distant from our heritage, so distant from our culture. We come in and we condemn polygyny. We find it in the Bible. We find it in history. We find it in the encyclopedias. We find it all around dealing with melanated people. All around dealing with melanated people who had a polytheistic understanding in the beginning. In the beginning, we believed that there was the Father God. We believed in the pantheon of gods. In the beginning, we believed in the pantheon of gods. Israel coming down has always dealt with poly. More than one God, more than one wife, more than one child. We always was poly in nature in everything we did. We come over, we learn from the Greeks, we learn from the Romans. They tell us what's good to eat. They tell us what we should think. They tell us what we should wear. They tell us how to be a great husband. They tell us how to be a great wife. They tell us how to be productive children. And none of it has been working for us. None of it has been working for us. None of it. Not the way that they do marriage. It hasn't worked for us. Monogamy hasn't worked for us. When monogamy wasn't working, then they did the same-sex marriage. That's not working. They let you be whatever gender you want to be. That's not working. All of it is a bunch of chaos that the Romans, what they're trying to do, they're trying to keep their power, so they're trying to adhere to the emotions of people. They give you your education, and then they form you to be a certain way, and while they're forming you and molding you, you display how they want you to act. They treat their own personal children different. But you out here playing the dancing man and the dancing woman, you're all assimilated into their society. We as a people were not a monogamous society. We wasn't monotheistic. We didn't have even the way we did Christianity was different. Our version of Christianity was not the same version that the Greeks and the Romans had. Okay? Even when Constantine came, when he combined it all, what he did to Christianity was monstrosities. So now you have people believing that it's okay to celebrate Halloween. It's okay to celebrate Christmas. It's okay to celebrate Valentine's Day. It's okay to splurge on your birthday. It's okay to do all of this wedding ring, all of this stuff that came straight from the Romans and the Greeks. They make you think that it's okay. And you have the same ideology dealing with marriage and monogamy. I'm here to tell y'all that some of us have learned, some of us are educated, some of us love our heritage, some of us understand our heritage, and some of us will not bow down to the Roman way of doing things. So, for all my people out there that loves marriage, whether it's monogamy or polygamy, I say thank you. Well, for my people that's in the scriptures and can embrace our culture, our Semitic culture, that's not afraid to do polygyny, that's not caring about a woman running over you, or a man running over you to bully you into monogamy, to bully you in the Grecian mind or in the Roman mind. For those people that's willing to say, I'm here, the kingdom of heaven is mine, it's within me, I'm going to do this, I'm going to form my unions, no matter if it's 1 or 5 or 10, I'm going to do it righteous, I'm going to do it the correct way. I want to say I love you all. Thank you all for listening to me. I have talked. This will be my main goal. My main distraction was all about polygyny today. Hopefully, some people was informed. Thank you all for listening. I'm finna get out of here once again. AOSD-CHANDLER. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for listening. I love you all. Hardy, Shalom, Shalom, even though most of that is not really Hebrew. Thank you all for listening and have a fantastic day.